This class is dedicated L'Schus Yem Huledes Shmuel Raskin La'atzlocha Begashmius V'Ruchnius. The Gemara asks, Azhara Legase Haruach Minayin, from where is there a warning for Gase Haruach? And the question is based on that whenever there is a punishment, we always find a warning. And the Gemara presents two answers. Omar Rava, Omar Zeiri. Rava, Omar Zeiri said, Shimu v'hazinu al tigbuhu. The pasuk says, listen and hear, don't rise up, which means that a person should not rise up and have gasus haruach. The Gemara presents a second answer. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Me'ahacha, it's from here that we learn the warning against gasus haruach. It says in the pasuk, V'ram levavecha v'shachachta. V'ram levavecha, if a person has gasus haruach v'shachachta, it'll lead him to forget Hashem. Uchsiv, and it's written, Hishamer lecha, be careful. Pentishkach as Hashem lekecha, lest you forget Hashem your God. And so we see that there's a warning against the person forgetting Hashem, and through gasus haruach, it leads a person to forget Hashem. So it comes out that there's a warning against gasus haruach. And the Gemara completes the answer. Rabbi Oven, Amar Rabbi Ilah. This goes along with the teaching of Rabbi Oven, Amar Rabbi Ilah. The Amar Rabbi Oven, Amar Rabbi Ilah. For Rabbi Oven, Amar Rabbi Ilah said, Kol mokim shenemar. Any place that it says Hishamer, pen, va'al, whether it says Hishamer or pen or al, and by us it says Hishamer lecha. It also says pen tishkach. Einei elo beloy sasa. It is nothing but a loisasa. So we see that there's a loisasa against forgetting Hashem, and gasus haruach brings to forgetting. So there's a loisasa. There's a warning against forgetting Hashem, and also against gasus haruach. The Gemara proceeds to present the teaching regarding gasus haruach. Dorosh Rav Avira. Rav Avira expounded. Zimnin Amar le Mishmei de Rav Asi. Sometimes he said it in the name of Rav Asi. V'zimnin Amar lo Mishmei de Rav Ami. And sometimes he said it in the name of Rav Ami. He said, Kol Adam sheyesh bei gasus haruach. Any person that has in him gasus haruach, l'soyif mismayet, will eventually become diminished. And Rashi says it means diminished from his position, from his greatness. Shenemar, as it says, rumu ma'at, that if a person is rumu, he lifts himself up with gasus haruach, ma'at, he will become small, he will become diminished. Rabbi Avira continued explaining the pasuk, V'shema toimar yeshna ba'ilam, but perhaps you will say he exists in the world, this person, Talmud loimar, therefore it says in the pasuk after rumu ma'at, it says ve'inenu, he will no longer be, which means he will die before his time. Rabbi Avira continues explaining the pasuk, V'im chayzer bay, and if he does tshuva, if he repents, nesaf bezmanai, then he will die in his time, ka'avram avinu, like Avram Avinu. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk after rumu ma'at ve'inenu v'humchu, which means, and if these people will make themselves small, kakel yikpatsun, they will leave like koil. They'll leave this world like koil. Who's koil? Ka'avram Yitzchak ve'Yaakov. Like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the chsiv that it's written by them, each one of them, it says one of the following words, Ba'koil, Mikoil, Koil. So it says, Ka'koil, like those about them, that it says Koil, Yikpatzim, they will leave the world, which is in their time. And Rabbi Avira concludes his teaching, V'im lav, and if not, if they do not do tshuva, Uchereish shibaylas yimalu. The end of the pasuk says, like the top of a stalk, they will be snapped off. The Gemara inquires, "Mai uchereish shibaylis?" The pasuk said, "Uchereish shibaylis simolu." So the Gemara inquires, "What's uchereish shibaylis? Like the head of a stalk?" And the Gemara responds, "Rav Huna v'Rav Chizda." Rav Huna and Rav Chizda argue about this. Chad Omar, one said, "Kisasa de shibalta." It's like the beard of a stalk, which means the top of the stalk has a dry part, and it falls off by itself, so the person will fall off like that, if he doesn't do tshuva. And one said, it's like the stalk itself, that it gets cut off at the time of harvest. And the Gemara now presents a question, and it's in gray because this is the lead up into the question. The Gemara asks, it makes sense, according to the one who said, like the beard of a stalk, that That's why it's written uchereish shibelis, the head of the stalk. The beard is like the head of the stalk. Elolamanda Omar Kishubalta Atzmo, but according to the one who said, like the stalk itself, my uchereish shibelis. What's uchereish shibelis? It should say ucheshibelis. Why chereish shibelis? And the Gemara presents an answer. Omar Rav Asi. Rav Asi said, V'chein tana de Bei Rabbi Yishmol. And so was taught in a brisa in Bei Rabbi Yishmol. Mashal la'odam, it's like a person. Shenichnas l'seich sedeyu, that enters his field. What he does is, gavoya gavoya, whatever is higher, hu melakit is what he harvests. So it comes out when a person is harvesting. Even when he's just cutting the stalk itself, it's always looked at which one is he cutting, the one that is roish. Because it goes by whatever is higher. So first one is higher, then the next one's higher, and as he's cutting it, and different ones become higher, that's what he cuts. So it's always that the stalk itself is considered, in a sense, chereish, because it's based on it being higher, that he harvests those stalks of grain. The Gemara now proceeds to present a teaching on nimichus haruach, the opposite of gasas haruach. It says in the pasuk, ve'ezdaka ushval ruach. So Rav Huna and Rav Chizda argue about the meaning of this pasuk. Chad Omar iti daka. One said the lowly is with me, which means Hashem lifts the lowly up to be with him. V'chad Omar, and one said ani es daka. I am with the lowly, which means that Hashem goes down to the lowly. And the Gemara comments on this machlekes, and really it would be in purple to indicate that it's a proof and support, but since it comes after both opinions that were presented together, it's in gray to indicate a comment on that teaching. And the Gemara says, "Mistabra," and it makes sense, Kimanda Amar, like the one, that it's like the one who said, Ani es daka, that I am with the lowly, that Hashem goes down to the lowly. Sharei Kadosh Baruch Hu niach kol harim ugvos. For Hashem put aside all the mountains and hills, v'hishra shchinasai al Har Sinai, and he rested his shchina on Har Sinai, v'lei gova Har Sinai l'mayla, and he did not elevate Har Sinai up, or you could say that as a result Har Sinai did not go up. So we see that it stays in its place, and Hashem joins those who are lowly. The Gemara now proceeds to present another teaching on the Michus HaRuach. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Lo'elam yilmad adom das kainei. A person should always learn from das kainei, the way Hashem does things. Sherei Kadosh Baruch Hu niach kol harim ugvos. For Hashem, for Kadosh Baruch Hu, put aside all the mountains and hills, v'hishra shchinasai al Har Sinai, and he rested his shchina on Har Sinai. And then it continues, according to some girsais, v'hiniach koli lonis toives, and he put aside all good trees, v'hishra shchinasai b'sneh, and he rested his shchina in the sneh, in the bushes, by Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara proceeds to present another teaching on gasas haruach. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, Kol adam sheyesh bei gasas haruach, any person that has in him gasas haruach, ra'ui legadoi ka'ashera, it is befitting to cut him down like an Asherah. Ksiv hacha, it's written here, V'ramei hakaima geduyim, those that are ramei hakaima, they have a high posture, which means they have gasas haruach, geduyim are cut down. Ksiv hasam, and it says over there by the Asherah, V'ashereim tegadeyun. So we see that there is a link between the two, that this person is deserving to be cut down like an Asherah. The Gemara presents another teaching about gasas haruach from Rabbi Elazar. V'omer Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Elazar said another teaching, Kol adam sheyesh bei gasas haruach, any person that has in him gasas haruach, ein afarei ninar, his dust will not be stirred, which means he won't get up when Mashiach comes. Shenemar, as it says, Hakitzu v'rananu sheichnei offer. It says, who will rise up? Those who are sheichnei offer. Explains Rabbi Elazar, sheichvei offer loinamar. It doesn't say sheichvei offer, those who rest physically in the dust. Elo sheichnei offer, but rather those that are sheichnei offer, which he learns from here, mi shenasa shachin le'offer b'chayev. It refers to he who becomes a neighbor to the dust in his lifetime, which means he doesn't have gasas haruach. The Gemara presents another related teaching from Rabbi Elazar. Va'amar Rabbi Elazar. And Rabbi Elazar said, Kol Adam sheyesh bei gasas ruach, any person that has in him gasas ruach, Shechina meyaleles alav, the Shechina cries over him. Shenemar, like it says, V'gavoya mimerchak yeyeda. V'gavoya, one who holds himself to be high. Yeyeda, Rashi explains how it means that the Shechina laments or cries over this person. The Gemara presents another teaching related to Nemichus Ruach, Darash Rabbi Vira. Rabbi Vira expounded on a pasuk, V'itema Rabbi Elazar, and some say it was Rabbi Elazar who did so. In continuation to the previous three teachings of Rabbi Elazar, come and see that the manner of flesh and blood of man is not like the manner of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Midas basar v'dam gavaya royes agavaya ve'in gavaya royes ashafel. The manner of basar v'dam is that the high sees the high. A great person pays attention and cares and shows respect to another great person, and the high doesn't see the low. Aval midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu ein ekein. But the manner of Hashem, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is not so. Hu gavaya v'royes ashafel. He is high, and he sees the low. Shenemar ki rom hav Hashem v'shafel yira. That Hashem is high, but he sees those who are low. The Gemara proceeds to present another teaching on Gasas Ruach. Omer Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, V'itema, and some say, Mar Ukvo said it. Kol Adam sheyesh bei Gasas Ruach, any person that has in him Gasas Ruach. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ein ani v'hu yochelim loder ba'elam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I and him cannot dwell together in the world. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Miloshni baseiser re'eyu, oisei atzmis, and here's the main part, Gva'inayim, u'rechav levov, oisei le'uchal. So it says, a person who's Gva'inayim, or rechav levov means wide heart. Here it means that he holds highly of himself. Oisei le'uchal. So the teaching says, Al tikri oisei ela itoy le'uchal. Don't read it to say oisei le'uchal, but rather itoy le'uchal. Together with him I cannot, that Hashem is saying, I cannot live with him in the world. And the Gemara presents a comment on this, that's why it's in gray, that it's pointing to the teaching. There are those who teach it, this thing that itoy le'uchal, on those who say lashon hara. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk at the beginning that we quoted, miloshni baseiser re'eyu oisei atzmis, and that refers to people who say lashon hara. And the Marsha says it means that it refers also to those who say lashon hara. So we read it miloshni baseiser re'eyu oisei atzmis. That's one. That Hashem says oisei atzmis about miloshni baseiser re'eyu, and then gva'inayim or chav levov oisei le'uchal. So the oisei le'uchal goes on both that were spoken about previously, both miloshni baseiser re'eyu, those, and also gva'inayim or chav levov. The Gemara proceeds to present another teaching regarding Gasas Ruach. Omar Rabbi Alexandri. Rabbi Alexandri said, Kol Adam sheyesh bei Gasas Ruach, any person that has in him Gasas Ruach, afilu ruach kima eichartoi, even a small wind agitates him, which means even a small distress in his life will create him tremendous distress. Shenemar, as it says, v'harshayim kayom nigrash, and the Rishayim, like the yam, like the sea, nigrash, to become agitated and upset. And he'll explain what we see from there. And Rabbi Alexandri explains, Umayam sheyesh bei kama reviyos ruach kima echartoi, and if the sea that has in it many reviyos of water, a small wind agitates it, Adam she'in bei ela reviyos achas al achas kama v'kama, a man that only has in him one reviyos, that a person only needs one reviyos of blood to give him life, how much more so that ruach kima, a light wind, a light form of distress, will agitate him. The Gemara will now proceeds to discuss whether any Gasas Ruach is good. Omar Rabbi Rav Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav. Rav Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav said, Talmud Chacham tzarich sheyehei bei echad mishmeina b'shminis. A Talmud Chacham needs to have in him an eighth of Gasas Ruach, in order that he should have a position that holds an element of authority. And the Gemara presents a related teaching to this, that's why it's in gray. because it relates to what was said previously. Amar Rav Huna bereid Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yeshua said, Uma atrele, and it crowns him, this small amount of gasus, it's ma'atrele, it crowns him kisasa l'shibota, like the beard to the stalk. The Gemara proceeds to present a related teaching. Omar Rava, Rava said, Beshamta de isbe, in Shamta, which is a form of excommunication. So in Shamta is one who has it, which means the full measure of Gasas HaRuach, Uveshamta de lesbe, and in Shamta is one who doesn't have it, one who doesn't have any amount at all, as we just learned that a Talmud Chacham should have an eighth of an eighth. The Gemara proceeds to present another related teaching, and this one argues with the previous two. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Lo mino v'lo miktsasa. A person shouldn't have not of it and not a little of it. Mi zutter, is it something of insignificance? Is it small, d'chsivbe, that it's written about it, about Gasas HaRuach, te'avas Hashem kol gvalev, that it's a te'eva, it's disgusting in front of Hashem, anybody that has Gasas HaRuach. This implies that it's such a severe thing that a person shouldn't have any amount of it. The Gemara proceeds to present a teaching related to the virtues of Nemichos HaRuach. Omar Chizkiah said, Ein tefillah shel adam nishmas, the tefillah of a person is not heard, ela im kain, unless mesim libay kebasar, he makes his heart like flesh. And Rashi says, which means that it's soft. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'hoya midei chodesh b'chodshei, every month it will be that Yavei Chol Basar Lishtachavos, all flesh will come and bow, which means to daven to Hashem v'Gomer. And Rashi says, from here we learn that only one who is like flesh should come and daven, because his tefillos will be heard, but not somebody whose heart is not like flesh. The Gemara now proceeds to present a related teaching to this, or a comment on this, and that's why it's in gray. Amar Rav Zera said, Basar, when the Torah talks about Saras, it says either basar, when there's tzaras on basar, or on adam. So Rab Zera points out, basar ksiv be v'nirpa. By basar, it's written by it v'nirpa. Adam like ksiv be v'nirpa. But when it refers to adam that has tzaras, it doesn't say afterwards v'nirpa and he will heal. And so from here we learn, says Rashi, that specifically a person that's mesim libay kebasar, he's likely to have a refuah to the yisurim in his life, but not somebody who does not make his heart, is not mesim libay kebasar. The Gemara presents another related comment. Amar Rabbi Yechanan said, Adam, the word Adam is a Rosh Tevis, it's an acronym for Efer, Dam, and Mara, which is ashes, blood, and Mara refers to the fluids in a person's liver, and Rashi elaborates on that. So we see that a person, it's a reminder ultimately of the vulnerability of a person. And Basar is an acronym, a Rosh Tevis, for Busha, shame. Srucha is a form of something which spoils. And Rima are worms. And Ikeda Amri, there are those who say that instead of Srucha, which is with a Samach, it doesn't fit with the sin in Basar. So they say Sha'il, which means the grave. The Chsiv B'Shin, a shin or a sin. So the shin and sin are in the same family, so they prefer that word. The Gemara now proceeds to present another teaching regarding Gasus HaRuach. Amar Rav Ashi said, Kol Adam sheyesh bei Gasus HaRuach, any person that has in him Gasus HaRuach, l'soif nifchas, will eventually, at the end, he will become diminished from his status, whatever level he's in society that he has. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk on the next Amud, when it speaks about Saras in the Torah, it says, V'laseis v'lasapachas. So again, we're referring to Tzaras. So says the teaching over here, Ve'ein se'es elo loshen gavoya. And se'es is nothing other than the language of high. How do we know this? Shenemar v'al kol haramim v'al kol hagvois hanisois. It says all the mountains that are up high, and on all the hills that are lifted. So we see that se'es refers to being menasa, being uplifted, and that refers to a person who has gasus haruach. So it says in the pasuk v'laseis v'lasapachas. So se'es refers to a person who has gasus haruach, and the Gemara continues ve'ein sapachas elo tefela, and sapachas is nothing other than secondary. Tefela means that it's tuffle, secondary to something else. Shene'amar, as it says, savcheni na al achas akuhunos lechol pas lechem. This is where one of the families of the Kahuna were told that eventually they will be demoted from their position to the extent that they will have to be they will have to request from a different family of Kehanim to be nitfal to them, to be secondary to them, in order to get a portion of the matnas kahuna. So we see it says v'laseis v'lasapachas, that somebody who is seis, who has gasas ruach, will eventually go to a position of being diminished. He'll be tafel to others. The Gemara proceeds to present another teaching. Omer Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, come and see how great are Nemuchei HaRuach, those who have the opposite of Gasas HaRuach, in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shebeshah shebeis HaMikdash kayim, for at the time that the Beis HaMikdash was standing, Adam makriv oila, a person would bring an oila, so what would be? Schar oila b'yadai. He would have the reward of his oila in his hand, in his possession. Mincha, if he would bring a mincha, schar mincha b'yadai, he would have the schar, the reward of a mincha in his hand. Avol misha daita ishfela, but someone who his attitude is one of being humble, male olav akosov, the Torah considers him ki ilu hikriv kol har karbonis kulam, as if he brought all the karbonis, all of them. Shenemar, as it says, zivchei elikim ruach nishbara. What are the zivchei elikim? Which zivchei means all the karbonis. It says plural, the karbonis of Hashem. So it refers to all of them. What are all the karbonis of Hashem? Ruach nishbara. A person that has a broken spirit, a person who has nimichas ruach. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi adds, v'loy oid, and not only this, not only what we just said, ela she'ein tfilasei nemesas, even more than this. Even more, that his tefillah is not despised. Shenemar, as it says, leiv nishbar v'nitke, a leiv, a heart that's broken and crushed, elikim leisivze, Hashem will not despise. The Gemara now presents the last and final teaching on this topic of Gasas HaRuach and Nemichus HaRuach, and it's also from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. V'omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Kol Hashem Orchesov, anyone who appraises, he's constantly checking Orchesov, his ways, his behaviors, his attitude. Ba'elam Haza, in this world, Zoiche v'roya b'Yeshuasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he will merit and see in the Yeshua of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar, as it says, V'som derech arenu b'yesh elikim. So the teaching of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is al tikri v'som ela v'shom derech. Don't read it to say v'som derech, but rather v'shom derech. A person who is shom derech, he evaluates, he appraises, he assesses his derech, what he's doing. Arenu, I will show him, make him see b'yesh elikim, in the Yeshua of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara quotes from the Mishnah. It said, Keitzad mekanalo, how does he warn her? Chulu, etc. And the Mishnah proceeded to present and describe how a husband warns his wife. The Gemara begins by asking a question. Ha gufa kashya. This itself is difficult. If we look at the words, what the Mishnah says after Keitzad mekanala, the Mishnah now proceeds to describe how the warning is done. If we look at the words that come after, that description is difficult. As we're going to see, it contradicts itself. And the Gemara explains, Amris, you said, the Tana of the Mishnah said, that Amar la b'fnei shnayim al tedabri im ish pleni zeh, if he told her in front of two edim, in front of two witnesses, don't talk with this individual, with so-and-so. So this is now the description of how kinoi is done, how a warning is done. So Alma, so we see that dibur stirahu, that talking is stira, that just like stira means if the woman is secluded alone with that individual, dibur has the same exact value. It's equivalent to it. They're the same thing. That's what we see from those words in the Mishnah. And the Gemara will proceed to explain what is the problem with that. V'hadar tani, and then he teaches, this is what he says afterwards in the Mishnah, that dibra imoi adayin muteris lebeisa umuteris lechol betruma, that if she spoke to him, she is still permitted to her house, meaning to her husband, and she is permitted to eat truma. So Alma, so we see from this din in the Mishnah that dibur loy klumu, that speaking is nothing at all. It has no value in terms of being a problem. So the Mishnah is contradicting itself by saying how is kinoi done, which means it's now going to describe how it's done, and then it presents that dibur is the equivalent of stira, and then it says that if dibur occurred, it's not a problem, which means it's not the equivalent of stira, and it's actually nothing at all in regard to what concerns us over here. And the Gemara answers, and the answer is difficult to see in the words. So basically the real answer is that we need to learn the Mishnah not to say, how does he warn her? And then the Mishnah describes how he warns her, but rather the Mishnah is saying, how does he warn her? And proceeds to present what would not be a warning, and then what would be a warning. Amar Abaya, Abaya said, Hachi ka Amar. This is what he's saying. This is what the Tana in the Mishnah is saying. That al tadabri v'dibra, if the husband told the wife, don't talk, and with this individual, v'dibra, and she spoke to him, al tadabri v'nistra, if he told her don't talk and she secluded herself, al tisteri v'dibra, if he said don't seclude yourself, and she spoke with the man, then adayin muteres lebeso muteres lechel b'truma, she is still permitted to her house and she is permitted to eat truma. And then the Mishnah presents what would be a good case of kinui. Nichnasa imei lebeisa seiser v'shasa kedei tuma, if after she was warned not to seclude herself with that individual, if she entered with him into a secluded place and she remained there enough for tuma, then asura lebeisa, she is forbidden to her home, to her house, v'asura lechel b'truma, and she's forbidden to eat truma. The Gemara now quotes the final teaching in the Mishnah, and we'll proceed to discuss it. It's said in the Mishnah, V'im meis, and if he dies, if the husband dies after his wife went against the warning, then choyletzes, she does chalitza, v'lei mesyabemes, and she doesn't do yibum. So the Gemara asks, Amai, why? Why is this? Tisyabim nami yavumi, let her do yibum. Why can't she do yibum? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yosef said, Amar Kra, the Pasuk said, V'yotzami beisai, and she will leave his house, V'holcha v'hoisa li'ish acher. This is a woman who did an Aveira of Znus, and we're including here the Sotah. So the Torah instructs she should leave his house, V'holcha, and she will go, V'hoisa, and she will be li'ish acher. Now, why does it say li'ish acher, to another man? It should say v'hoisa li'ish, she'll be to a man. Obviously, it's another man. We learn from here li'ish acher, to another man, v'loi la yavam, and not to the yavam. So from there we learn that there is no option for yibum. The Gemara presents a question on this. Amr le Abaya said to Rav Yosef, he said to him, Ela me'ata, so now, chalitza nami lo tibai. She should also not need chalitza, because we know that chalitza and yibum go together. So if there's no concept of yibum, there should be no concept of chalitza. Amar le, he said to him, Rav Yosef said to Abaya, Ilu isa lebal, miloi baya get. If the husband was alive, would she not need a divorce? So hashta nami tiboy chalitza. Now also she should need chalitza, just like if the husband's alive. Although she's not permitted to stay married to him, she is married and she needs to receive a divorce. So too over here, we're not saying that there's no concept of yibum. There is a concept because there is a connection between them. However, yibum is not permitted. They cannot live together. So therefore, what needs to be done is chalitza. The Gemara now concludes, and our Daf concludes, with an alternative version of this discussion between what Rav Yosef answered to the question, let her do yibum, and therefore what Abaya asked and what Rav Yosef answered him. V'ista amri, and there are those who say, Omar Rav Yosef said, Rachmana said, the merciful one said in the Torah, V'yotzami beisai v'holcha v'hoisa li'ishacher. She should leave his house, and she should go and be to another man. What was the reason? So that she should not destroy his house. And you say, let her do yibum. We don't want her to destroy the husband's house. We also don't want her to destroy the yavam's house. And that's why she can't do yibum. That's where we learn that she shouldn't do yibum. And the Gemara presents a question. Abaya said to him, to Rav Yosef, so now, she should also not marry anyone else. In order not to destroy his house. Just like the Torah doesn't want her to destroy the house of the husband and not the house of the brother, she shouldn't get married to anybody in order not to destroy anybody's house. And the Gemara presents the answer. Omar le, Rav Yosef said to Abaya, Mi karaminan lo alei ba'al karche. Are we placing her on him by force? By yibum, we're basically telling the brother this is his mitzvah, to do yibum. So we're placing it on him by force. But by a stranger, are we placing it on him by force? It's his choice. And as Rashi says, if we're not placing it on the Yibum by force, that means the whole idea of Yibum falls away. Once we're not placing it on him by force, that means there is no option for Yibum, even not only as the preference, not at all, because Yibum by its nature has to be that it's a thing that we encourage. Once we say that we can't encourage it, that means there's no place for it. Once there's no place for it, it's actually forbidden, because a woman is not allowed to marry her husband's brother unless it's a case of Yibum.